All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 17. Item number 17 is an informational item only. It's informational. This is from planning. It's received a staff presentation on cannabis ecotourism. Gabriel, you're up.
Good morning, members of the board. This item is, as you rightfully said, an informational item. The issue of ecotourism has been brought to my attention quite a while back, and I've been trying to get an audience to see which direction or the board would like to go. Basically, the request would be that if we could, ecotourism would be one of those things that would be an additional layer to our existing cannabis regulations. And the way it would work would actually depend on each individual specific request that we get. I couldn't tell you precisely what it would look like, but I can tell you what it would not look like because of some of the the challenges we may have with some of the existing regulations we may have at hand. But it would help to know that it's been done in other places and that they have regulated it in a way that works with their individual codes. So we do allow agritourism by right in certain zones. RRRA, you could do wine tasting tours and so on and so forth. That's not regulated. However, when it comes to cannabis, we haven't really crossed that line. So the two issues before the board today is which direction do you really want us to go on this particular item, and that is why the recommendation is just to receive the presentation and perhaps have a discussion. Thank you.
Martin, do you have a comment you'd like to?
Yes, I don't think that I don't think it merits the amount of angst that it puts out into the community. I think that in the 4 years that I've been at the Visitors Bureau, I've not had one call regarding cannabis tourism. I just don't think that ultimately it's something that we need to deal with right now.
Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I respectfully disagree. I think it is something we need to deal with. I've gotten a lot of calls about this. My question is, obviously this is if you're an ag company, I wanted to have tours of cows. I could do that because I'm an ag producer.
Absolutely.
Cannabis does not have the same rights because we have not declared it to be an agricultural product. What are and so it would be a non-issue if it was. What are the material impacts to 17.95 by declaring this a ag product?
Well, for starters, and I think your question probably has a deeper answer than what I'm going to give you, but for starters, we would have to go into 1795 and modify certain sections of it. For example, section 010, which would be the purpose, section 020, which would be what are some of the things that are definitions, for example. We would have to add cannabis tourism as a definition in that section. Section 050, which would be what would be the standards that we would actually allow once we say this is the way we want to go. And then section 060, which is the application process. So there has to be a way that we want to manage this through the modification of the application itself. And then 090. So that is the easy part of the process is we can do the paperwork. There are some other complicated parts of it, which were ingrained into the cannabis legislation itself, which would really not be applicable in this particular instance. For example, badging and things like that. People will have to have IDs on them if they're part of a cannabis enterprise. When Mr. Oliver and I were discussing this morning, The example was, if you were the bus driver who was driving a cannabis tour bus to a location, for example, would you be required to be fingerprinted and have a card as if you were a procurer of those services? So there are some really vague areas that we still need to kind of get into, but before we put our shoulders to the wheel, we want to make sure that we're heading in the right direction.
So, okay, I understand the process would need to be changed, and those type of questions would have to happen. But if it was an ag product, would that limit our ability to regulate it? Certainly as far as the things that are really vital to it, including, how we go about our inspections, permits, all those security.
Right.
Will those change by simply declaring this an ag product? Or can we maintain those safety pieces while being an ag product also?
Absolutely. I think we can, because we have a lot of the mechanism already in place. We have all the security measures, all the inspections, all those things are done. We're just adding an additional layer. But when it comes to declaring a cannabis and ag product, I had a conversation not too long ago with the county council, and there is other issues that need to be considered along those lines, which are legal, and also I don't know precisely how, because we had an EIR for cannabis, what this type of modification to that section of the ordinance is actually going to have on the general language of the EIR and so on and so forth. So it's going to take quite a little bit of take a step back and kind of put our heads together and give you a more robust answer if that is the direction you want us to go. I don't know if Sarah wanted to comment on that.
Just briefly, I think the short answer, Supervisor Garamendi, is yes. Obviously, by treating cannabis separately from other agricultural processes or products, that has allowed the board to regulate it in different ways, and in terms of zoning and on a wide variety of fronts. I mean, I think that it's difficult to speak to specifics. I mean, as Mr. Elliott said, we obviously have an EIR for our existing cannabis program. Without knowing exactly what additional activities, in addition to what's being conducted right now, that individual folks or projects might be looking to do, it's difficult to say what we would have to amend or change, if that makes sense. There are certain types of activities that may already be permissible today without having to change anything. On the other hand, other types of proposals or projects may well require changes to zoning, changes to 17.95, or other provisions of county code.
Because when we do agritourism for, let's say, a winery, are they required to have an administrative use permit to do that? No?
In the RR zone and in some of those other zones, it's just something that's allowed by right. It's in the code. So you could do those kinds of things.
You go to building and get your
Right,
for
and you're not required to have a tour bus to move people from one place to the other. They're allowed to travel freely. However, because of the nature of cannabis, places that have done this, and I think just to be sensitive, to the angst, if I can borrow your word, they would require that any kind of tourism activity be kind of coordinated. So rather than additional traffic on the roadways, the purveyor would, get a tour bus and kind of shuttle people from location to location. Now, some of the other components of it could also cross over into lodging. For example, I know there are facilities here as part of the land use that's already been approved that do have bed and breakfast on the property. And so on and so forth. So, camping, for example, it's permitted in certain zones as well. So, like Sarah rightfully said, there are certain components of it that are already covered. However, if we're bringing it under the umbrella of cannabis, then I think we need to kind of narrow things down a little bit and totally understand what exactly we are doing and how we're going to do it, just because of the nature of that industry.
I think the question that you posed to us is you're trying to find out whether we want to explore this.
Yes.
So my input back to you would be yes. I think we ought to explore this, my vote. But I think I would like to take the approach of trying to normalize this under making an ag product and find out how that impacts 1795 materially
Right.
and the things that we've done. Because I think for the most part the system's working right now.
Right.
This is becoming much more mainstream and common. And so we're not where we were 5 years ago. And I think the industry has proven to be a reasonable partner.
Right.
As they've gone through some pretty hard economic times.
Yeah,
and so,
I mean-
you know, and I understand some of the complexities.
Right.
Wine tasting or cannabis tasting, to me, you're not supposed to drive impaired no matter what. So, you know, I just think that as this becomes more mainstream, we ought to try to figure out how to make it like any other product we've got going, while trying to find a way to maintain the system that seems to be working, which I know we have some adjustments to make. So, to your question, that's where I stand.
Thank you.
Ben?
I certainly hear what Supervisor Hubbard has to say. I certainly hear what Supervisor Garamendi has to say. I fall somewhere in between those two. I'm never one to shy from the angst, you know, when it comes to getting anything done. But at the same time, I have heard from a few people about this. But where I stand is we have something that's, in my opinion, I'll agree with Mr. Garamendi, there's something that's working right now. You know, and it's limiting. I'm not in a rush to change that to a higher level with so many gray areas and unforeseen events when it comes to something like agritourism right now. So maybe something to consider in the future. I think we're a little ahead of ourselves trying to push something that there are so many unknowns at this time, and I haven't, you know, while I have had a few people ask me about it, it's not to the point where it's a game changer with that many people in Calaveras County asking me to do with it. So I think we can, you know, take our time when we look at something like this and make sure that we keep doing the right thing. So not high on my priority list with everything else we have going on.
Amanda?
I have similar questions that Supervisor Garamendi asked, such as the impact of 17.95. We also have lawsuits. What is the impact to the EIR? What are those processes that we need to make sure that we're not going down something and revisiting those things? And I would like more clarity on that. I agree with Supervisor Stopper. It's a system that's currently working. There's so many gray areas. But with what you're commenting on about camping and B&Bs and things like that, we have an issue with that already in this county. So how is that overlap when we add cannabis on top of that going to address the issues that we are currently facing with some of those ag tourism issues? You know, I've heard from wineries the struggles they've had to promote ag tourism just themselves on the alcohol aspect of it. So if we can't resolve that in the current system, how are we going to be able to bring that foundation into a very gray, unknown area? And so I'm wary of that, and I'm concerned when we can't address the current issues with wine and those struggles that that industry is having, and then bring those same concepts into cannabis. I think maybe the one question I would like to learn more about and consider it would be, do we want to bring this as an ag project in general? Because if we can't address that question, then I don't think any of the others can be even talked about. Because to Supervisor Garamendi's point, you know, there are opportunities out there, and we need to be able to evolve to continue an economic an expanding economic commodity in this county. However, there are some things that need to come first to have that discussion, such as 17.95. Do we want an ag product or not? Because then that's going to dictate what your workload is going to be in the coming future. There's an opportunity, you look at Bend, Oregon, you look at Mendel, Humboldt, you look at what Berkeley's done up in Alturas. But what are the state regulations on that, and is there an additional barrier that we're unaware of? I'm not against, but there's just too many unknowns right now.
I totally respect your point of view, but let me just interject a little bit. All those other industries you mentioned are not regulated by the county. Wineries, they're allowed by right, et cetera, et cetera. You are already regulating cannabis very, very strictly, and there are state laws in that regard. So I think, rest assured that the protection is already there. I think what we need to do, if it's a majority decision on the part of the board, is to do some exploration, how it works in other places and how they have been able to withstand whatever some of the challenges there have been. One thing is for sure, even our regulation under cannabis currently is a little limiting. And if this is that avenue that provides opportunity for those who might be strapped, it is just something that is out there that I think is worth discussing. But then again, I am not going to spend my time on it unless I have a majority of the members saying, go do it.
I would respectfully disagree in the terms that wine is not overseen. I've had more complaints from wineries saying that what they want to do in terms of ag tourism on their property, they have been shut down by the county. So I think we should be careful and ensure that we are acknowledging those issues that are out there that have been come up. There has been issues, and the county has shut down their ag tourism ideas. So if we can't address those ideas, I do not know how we can continue that platform into cannabis. And I'm not saying it's since you've been here, but it has been over the years that there has been challenges, and I want to be able to use that foundation to bring into all types of ag tourism.
Absolutely.
But if we can't tackle that foundation, I don't know how we're going to have a successful outcome in cannabis, regulated or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think tourism in general, whether it's agritourism, cannabis tourism, is a good thing for the county. I think we need to have a brand. We need to be known for something, and most importantly, we need to be known for something that generates revenue for the county. If you don't mind, some of these complaints you received regarding wineries, if you can forward them to me. I don't have a clue what they are and why they would be, but I would like to know to see how we can resolve them. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that we do have a tour company here in Calaveras County. We have one, and they have been struggling for over a year just trying to get wine tours off the ground. I just am not convinced that there's a demand for the cannabis tours.
Thank you.
I totally respect what Supervisor Garamendi said, though.
Thank you.
And if we're going one more comment, I think we as a government have to be very careful about putting up barriers to entrepreneurs who want to create new business and new wealth. Tourism is our #1 industry in this county. There's no debating that at all. I think if we think we know what exactly the future is going to hold or exactly what every consumer wants, that's not our job. Our job, that's the entrepreneur who's going to go out and build new business in this county. And that's what we need to foster and move forward. So we're talking about this mountain of regulation. How do we get around it or build it bigger? Maybe we ought to remove some of it. Maybe higher and more complex isn't the answer. Maybe getting simpler.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Garamendi, you're talking to my libertarian side of my heart right now. I know, and it's hard for me to speak against that. But with something like this, and the state not even getting it right so far, and I really, to say the least, of the counties across the state that have regulated, I really feel like Calaveras does have a solid system. If anything, my libertarian side of my heart wants to go with you, like 100% for everybody on everything. I'm not talking about marijuana, but we need to slow walk this if we're gonna do it. We need to slow walk it and make sure we keep doing it right. We haven't fallen on our face this time around yet, so let's not get going too fast and trip up, okay? That's where I stand.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, without getting into the policy aspect of this, and this is good dialogue, this would be the kind of dialogue, just to get an idea, what the board's, thinking. We still have the public to hear from as well. But as far as timing, I know there's a lot of very important things that you've put on the plate of the planning department that you want to get done, with GHG reduction, the zoning ordinance, community plans, and I can continue. So it'd be a matter of also priorities in my mind. I think you realize right now in the planning department, out of an authorized strength of 9 people, I think we've got only 4 or 5 actually people in there working, right now. Like a lot of other departments, they don't have the full staffing. So there's a practical element here too of, how many things can we be juggling at once. I remember talking with my IT director who had there's all kinds of great things you can do, but so you're going to get further faster if I can use a rifle instead of a shotgun. I'll do a better job and get it done quicker, project by project. Doesn't mean everything has to be linear. You can move some things concurrently. But I think there's a practical limitation, and we want to make sure what's your highest priorities of things you want to work on, policy aspects aside.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments or questions? I'll just say that I'm in agreement, I think, with Supervisor Hubbard and Amanda and Ben. I don't think it's the right time. I think, what we're doing now may seem to be running very well, but I don't think we're at the right place right now to open this up and add more to it. I do know that even though it may seem that we are running very well, we haven't had a report, and I think it was brought up earlier, but public had made comments that we haven't had a report on how it's going and what things are being done at this point with what we have in the county. And I do know that if we add this to it right now, I'm still getting complaints from my constituents in my district that some of these farms are very close to residential developments and areas, and to add buses coming in of people to do tour, I know it's going to be a big sell to them, more complaints from them about what's going on. So I think some of these questions and things have to be worked out if we're going to go forward with this, because it's just not something that we can just turn around today and say, okay, I'm in favor of it, and then just let it go. I understand what Supervisor Garamendi is talking about, but I'm not so sure in this particular industry right now, because it is still new, to reduce some of the regulations on it, which he was talking about. I think it has been very quiet. As Jack and I have sat in this boardroom where it was full and right side, left side, and all kinds of things being said, it's kind of quieted down. Even the number of people here today is a great number less than what we were if this had been 5 years ago or 6 years ago. But I just can't see this moving forward right now. So,
Thank you.
and with that, I will open up the public comments.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair and Supervisors. My name is Sarah Bodner. I'm a new face here, but I have been working on cannabis policy all over Northern California since legalization. I've been working locally with Jennifer Smith of Canvas Farms and some of your other operators here to paint a picture about what this could look like here in Calaveras. And I want to just open up some perspective, because I think we'd be missing a great opportunity to continue with exploration and continue having this conversation, which clearly needs to be had, about what, where, when, and why do we introduce new activities. And there is a whole list of state-licensed activities that are available here in California that the County of Calaveras hasn't yet activated. And I will tell you, many other jurisdictions similarly have been slow to activate, and really nobody has done it right with cannabis agritourism. There are pockets in different places where a city or a county has done something innovative, but nobody's really taken it and said, you know, we're going to be a place that's known for doing this well. And I think Calaveras could be that place because of where you are and your rich agricultural history and some of the operators that you have here. And I think opening up this exploration would allow you to look at myriad activities. We're not just talking about buses of people on rural roads. We're talking about the only option you have right now to consume cannabis is basically go into a store and leave it with a paper bag. Imagine if that was the only way you could drink a beer. Imagine if you couldn't go to a winery if you wanted to. Imagine if you couldn't have food with your wine or food with your beer. You know, we have such limited experiences that we can offer people, and there's a whole new type of what we call cannasseur, which is a cannabis-interested tourist and consumer. And we're missing them. And most of California, which is one of the most famous cannabis-producing regions in the entire world, is missing them. And here, with your proximity to the Bay Area and Sacramento, you've got these people, and you have the right place for it. And so continuing to have a conversation about what are these other facilities? Could we look at allowing a tasting room, perhaps, in the right zone with the right conditions and a use permit, that somebody could be having a beautiful view and buy cannabis where it's grown? Wouldn't that be lovely? You know, what if we could allow for a farm tour so somebody can come see it being grown professionally and at a regulated farm that's followed all the rules? So we have those kind of options if we continue to explore what Gabriel has brought forth. And thank you. Thank you to Gabriel for opening up this conversation, because you know how long it takes to set good policy. And starting now gives you that chance to look at it, be thoughtful, think about what's right for here, and to allow businesses to start to dream a little bit and to help grow your tax base, grow the opportunities, and attract and retain new kinds of visitors here. To expand what you already have. Thank you.
Okay, I've heard a comment today that there's a lot of gray areas and missing pieces and all that. A lot of these issues were crystal clear back in the day. I've done this for a couple of years. I've been to a few meetings. All of this was defined many times. It was investigated many times. Ag was never going to be attached to pot. It was never going to happen. We've investigated that. We've been through it. There's been multiple votes with multiple boards of supervisors saying no. And now we hear that, well, there might be some money involved. We've heard that story before. You know, how much money are we actually taking in? That's why we need to find out what's going on with the current program. The history of this whole thing is before us, and we can see it. This has been tried before. A few years back, I think Supervisor Toffanelli might be the only board member who was there then, when the Richardson project was proposed up in District 2. And that was going to be, you know, jerking around the zoning and the purposes within the zoning. And, you know, it was a pot grow. He said, no, we can't be agriculture, so he planted some grapevines. And that didn't make it agriculture. And then maybe he planted some pansies or something else, or got some chickens. But the people in that area, and it was a subdivision of lots, were outraged to have music festivals coming into their neighborhoods, to have traffic coming into their neighborhoods, to have all this extra activity in a neighborhood where they've lived at most of their lives and enjoyed the peace and quiet. Most of them are retired. You know, so there's no money, there's no history to do any of this. And if you want to go forward with this, you really have to scrutinize it. This needs to be before the Planning Commission. This needs to have a town hall meeting where all the citizens of Calaveras County are aware, either at downtown San Andreas at the town hall, the Bret Hart Theater. There's lots of places to have town hall meetings. We've had those before. Wait until you see and hear the outrage. If you try to put the Richardson project in, calling it something else right now, it's the same thing. It's a scam. There's no money in it. You can rely on TOT or the incremental increase of TOT to make money off of this. TOT goes up and down seasonally. You know, we need to look out for the businesses that rely on lodging up in District 3 and other places. We've got restaurants that are failing. We want to get people up there. We don't need a Disneyland-style tour with kids in a pot grow. There are other things that we can support and move ahead with and bring this county back up to where it used to be, especially District 3. It's dying on the vine up there. So if we can get it to the Planning Commission...
Your time is up.
Oh, boy, that was fast.
That was fast.
Okay, thank you.
Other public comments? Mr.
Asgalia,
Segalia.
Taxpayer Association. Well, the more I learn, the less I realize how little I really know. How many people here know what the current state of the cannabis market is? One. Okay. In order for government to get involved in the marketplace or try to manipulate the market, it has to first know about it. Now, from my understanding, there's three parts to cannabis. One is hemp, which is the fiber. The other one is THC, which is the I don't know if it's addictive, but it will influence your thinking quite strongly and interfere with your language. And the third one is CBD, which is not harmful, but used quite often in lieu of aspirin and other kinds of painkillers. Also kind of relaxes you. And so the first and the third kind seem to be okay and a good benefit. Now, as to the market, I was part of a group that heard a study of this with the industry giving its side of it. This needs to happen here. And it turns out that the cost of marijuana is dirt cheap right now. The reason why it's dirt cheap is because there's plenty of it. So if there's plenty, I'm not sure how much of that is regulated or non-regulated, and I'm really not sure if anybody knows how many of the grows in this county are regulated versus, what the percentage is between the two. I got a feeling that a good part of the industry is unregulated. So we have a situation where the county has obviously done no harm to the market, otherwise the price wouldn't be so cheap. So the question is to have a formal kind of tourism type process. I think leave that up to the industry. They can figure out how to do that. You don't have to teach them how what to do with the bus and also the noise aspects of that. We already got plenty of laws on hurting our neighbors, and there's plenty of legal processes to protect people and protect property rights. So I recommend do no harm. Thank you.
Other public comments? Mr. Strange.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
Let me first start with a simple statement. May 2022, an article in Forbes magazine that cannabis tourism is now a $17 billion industry in the United States. Okay, and before, Sarah did a great job, much better than I'll be able to do, on kind of describing how California is such an important part of that. So we have a decision here in my mind, a simple decision, is do we allow the world to pass us by? Or do we decide that we want to be part of that $17 billion industry and growing? Okay, and obviously there's some challenges with that. What Martin, I appreciate the comment on the winery tourism. In my opinion, the analogy is a little challenging because we have wineries almost on every corner. Okay, and so I think that from that standpoint, I would hope we'd never see cannabis operations on every corner in Calaveras County. I see a very small, limited opportunity in some locations to really make a difference. And that's kind of where I'm looking to push. I've had licenses. I've withdrawn my licenses now because me personally, the dollars and cents don't make it. If I could do some value-added opportunities, it would make, I mean, it's a game changer. Okay, and I'm only speaking for myself. And wanting, I've got a beautiful property on the South Fork McCullum River. I've been approached by out-of-state, deep-pocket investors that would love to be part of the tourism aspect of cannabis because they see where that future's coming. So we can decide to put this off and wait next year and next year and next year, and we'll get nowhere with it. Or we can decide to at least start that conversation now, work with the existing framework and ordinances that we have, do some conditional approval, let's monitor that, let's be transparent, and I can guarantee every one of you sitting in here today will be nothing but impressed with the revenues that come from the taxes. Right now, you've just lost $70,000 from me alone by withdrawing my licenses. Hopefully that's a temporary thing. But then you add the TOT, which we're looking at doing overnight accommodations. I've got 2 clients right now. I do a lot of biological work. 2 clients that are doing the glamping, eco-camping kind of thing. They have over 100 units. That's not what I'm talking about on my property. But why are they in it? Because the huge income. There's one company alone that has a $174 million annual revenue for maintenance and membership.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Public comment?
Vicki Ranke, and I am speaking on behalf of Calaveras residents against commercial marijuana, crack 'em. We've been at this for a long time, 5 years at least, and I'm here always to remind you of this whole process and what the residents of Calaveras County wanted or didn't want when it came to marijuana. They voted no to have an ordinance go through that would regulate marijuana. That was voted down because the people didn't want it here. So the Board of Supervisors, a couple years later, decided, well, we want it here. So you, and not you particularly, maybe you weren't on the board at the time, but it was voted by the Board of Supervisors to bring it here. The people didn't want it. Remember, sorry, but marijuana is a drug. The purpose of marijuana is to get high. And it's okay if you're an adult and you want to use marijuana and get high. But the people here didn't want it in our communities. And yes, Supervisor German, said, well, it's normalized now. Maybe in some people's mind, but not in a lot of families' minds. They don't want their children exposed to it. They don't want to see it here in Calaveras County. Yes, it's here. It's been very under the radar, which has been okay because that is helpful for the community. But to ever make it an ag product, you better never, ever do that. You will have the wrath of the people on you, because that was one of the discussions I remember, again, and I know Bill brought that up, and all the supervisors really agreed that we should never make it an ag product, because it is not an ag product. It is a drug. And if people want to come up here, there's dispensaries up here, they can buy some marijuana and go out into the wilderness and have their marijuana out there, that's fine. So anyway, I wanted to remind you about that, and hopefully you will never consider making it an ag product, because it is not. The other thing is about the money. This board gave up $2.3 million in taxes because they were so sad that these people were losing money. Well, you know what? We all go into business, we all try our best, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And why are we bending over backwards to try to make it work when technically nobody really wants that product here in our county? And we get to make those choices locally. I looked at the state website, and I didn't see anything about ecotourism in any of the information given out by the state. So I don't know where, how's that, did we get like 2 minutes now?
3 minutes.
That went very fast. Well, I hope you got the message. We don't want to expand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Good morning. My name is Jay Smith, and I own one of the small, struggling farms in Calaveras. As I'm sure you guys are aware, the cannabis industry in Calaveras is and has been struggling over the last few years and definitely needs other avenues and sources of funds to keep this industry here alive. In the past, Calaveras has been on the forefront in many ways, coming up with industry standards, guidelines for our county, in which a lot of other counties have used as a template. Today is another opportunity for our county. I said this is not only an opportunity for additional revenue for our county, but also the opportunity to teach people hands-on about how the industry works. I said, why would you not support someone trying to bring more income, tourists, and education to Calaveras? Regardless of your personal feelings on the subject, this is the direction in which our industry is going. And I appreciate the time to share my thoughts with you on this. And by the way, cannabis has a lot other needs to getting high. I beat cancer with it 3 times, so there's a lot of other positive avenues for it. Thank you.
You need to talk to the board, but...
I apologize. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Susan Morse, District 4. I just want to say thank you for your careful consideration this morning when we heard all this. I, too, have been here coming to these meetings since 2016. I heard all of it for many, many days, many, many hours, and we've learned a lot. The county's learned a lot. We've made a lot of, we've given a lot to the cannabis and marijuana industry. We don't want to make any more mistakes. So I applaud each one of you that want to look into, I'm not even sure you need to look into it. We've looked into it. We've had all the funds, the big money promised to us here. We've taught, it's been over and over and over, hours and hours. And so thank you for being careful and thinking about this, because I think when we talk about experience, Calaveras County has a lot of experience in what's the right thing to do and things that are not so good. So anyway, I applaud you, and the residents will be applauding you also.
Mr. Bolger.
Good morning, Mark Bolger, Rimrock Farms. I have to say it gives me a glimmer of hope for California politics when I hear an elected official mention that there's some libertarian blood pumping through their heart, so thank you for giving me that hope, you know. Anyway, as an unabashed capitalist, I think any business is good business. I mean, it makes sense to me that, you know, bringing people to the county and bringing more dollars to the county is a good thing. I think the way we solve this pretty easily is do what we all know makes common sense, is make this an ag product. I know that's not going to get anywhere, but what the hell, I got 3 minutes, might as well say it. I think also, you know, going to staff's report that I didn't hear the planning director mention, but it was in the agenda item printout. Humboldt County was mentioned several times as an example of what this could be. And I think Humboldt County is doing a lot of things to help struggling farms there. I mentioned it 6 weeks ago. 2-year tax break. That's hard for us to compete. sorry to hijack this a little bit, but anyway, again, I think that moving projects forward and pumping up agriculture and any tourism that follows is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Good morning, Board. Jennifer Smith. Where to begin? I think many of you know I bought a winery, and it is a licensed and bonded winery, and then I added cannabis to that. I can do everything in relation to agritourism because I'm zoned ag. I can have people tour my wine grapes, I can have people taste wine, but because I have cannabis, I can't do the same with cannabis. The state calls it an ag product, and we need to start treating it the same. It's a plant. This isn't about necessarily dollars and cents. This is about bringing in education about cannabis and Calaveras to a broader audience. It's about the senses and people being able to smell and taste and learn about it. This isn't about tax revenue or extra TOT I'm going to get from my Airbnb. That's not going to be, the savior of the budget of Calaveras County. This is about education. This is about image. This is about bringing a new tourist, a new guest to Calaveras County. They come here for wine. They come here for skiing. They come here for our outdoor experiences, rafting, hiking. We're a beautiful county. Cannabis is a part of our county. Let's not ignore it. Let's expose people to the education of it smartly. Let's destigmatize it. Let's be a leader in this and not a follower. We lost 2 valuable years during the ban, and our farms are suffering because of that, because they lost relevance. Let's be ahead of this. Production-only counties are going to suffer. Wineries don't just get to grow grapes. They get to make wine. They get to show off their vineyards. They get to show off their locations. They get to have people come and taste their wine. That's normal. That's agriculture. That's what we do. We are an agricultural county, and this is just no different. And so I want everybody to take a minute, and think, we're not asking for this to happen today. We're asking for it to be studied. We know policy takes a long time, and the longer we wait, the further we're going to fall behind again. We really have a chance. We're looking at places like Humboldt, Trinity, Mendocino that are falling behind because all they have and offer are small farms that are failing. We have the opportunity. We have great policy here. We have great farmers here. We have amazing properties that people should go see, like Terry's, like mine, like Mark's, like Dennis's. We have opportunities. Let's take advantage of that, and let's be on the forefront of this and not fall behind. Thanks.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, do we have any online?
There are no online public comments.
Okay, we will close public comments and bring it back to the board. Is there any final comments? This is an informational item. Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you, Supervisor Toffanelli. It might take me 7 years, but I can now count to 4. So we'll move on, but I will leave with just one last thought. We as a government are pretty good at building structures and putting businesses and individuals in boxes, which means that we're picking winners and losers. And I often, in my experience, don't think government in general is very good at that. So whatever we do, I think we ought to think about removing obstacles to entrepreneurs and new business and really walk the walk of being business friendly. And that means not assuming we know how the entrepreneur is going to go out and figure out how to make a buck. You have to have safety protections in your community. But I just want to caution us about making things too complex. We got to make things simpler. That's all.
Any other comments? Supervisor Stopper.
Again, Supervisor Garamendi singing to my heart. With that, I do have interest in this. I think that the board has been clear about what our priorities are. We've been talking about doing, this is primarily put forward by planning when it comes to these type of things. We still have implementation of the general plan, zoning ordinances, and other things that have been brought up that, we have years of work to do still. But with that, at the same time, any I am open-minded to any investigation on how we can make it easier for any business, to operate within the confines of being good neighbors to our community at the same time. I do want to keep in mind also a comment that Mr. Toffenelli made. And I do hear the same thing from a lot of his constituents. Some of them used to be in my district at the top of the hill there near you. So I think there are the right places to do this type of tourism on a lot of these farms. I do agree with that, but I think there are some farms that are currently operating underneath our ordinance that this type of tourism would not work in certain communities. And so if we do investigation and we do look at this in the future, I think we need to keep that in mind, and how are we going to regulate that so we can keep our community as a whole happy, so that they can live in the peace and prosperity that they chose to when they moved to Calaveras County. That's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Stopper.
Could I just say, I just wanted to say that previous to this meeting, and the growers that I spoke with did not see the merit in this type of tourism. Obviously, I'm very pro-tourism, and I just wanted to thank Mark, Sarah, Jennifer, Mr. Stange for your opinions.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, with that, we'll move on.